Alright, man. This is going to be a rant. I hate pie charts. But today we're going to be comparing bar charts to pie charts. I'm going to make my case as to why bar charts are better and should be used in 99% of circumstances. But hopefully we can all join in together and join in hatred for pie charts. Alright, and this stuff gets me so fired up that I even made a little slideshow for today's video. And here's a little picture representation of pie charts versus bar charts. Obviously the blue guy is bar charts because he's about to knock out the guy in red. But both these charts have the same purpose. We're going to be showing numeric values, something like mean, sum, or counts by categorical variables. Now we're going to see later on that one is better than the other for showing these things, but we'll get into why in just a moment. But one example of when we might want to do this is showing something like GDP of North American countries, and these two charts would both be perfect to display that information. So in the bar chart side, we would have each category or each bar represents one of the North American countries, and the length of the bar can represent the total GDP last year, or it can represent the average GDP over the last 10 years for each country. And then the length of the bar obviously represents the numeric value that we're after. And you can see that along the x-axis or the y-axis depending on the orientation that you have your visualization. So on the other side, we can also have a pie chart where each pie slice represents a country, and the size of the slice shows the overall percentage that each GDP of each country represents of the entire GDP of all North American countries. All right, makes sense? I'm pretty sure everybody knows what a pie chart is, but let's get into why bar charts are actually better. So first of all, bar charts depict numeric values on one axis against a category on another, kind of like we just explained in the example. So you can either have on the y-axis or the x-axis your numeric value, and then on the opposite your categorical variables. Now obviously, again, the length of the bar represents the numeric value that is associated with each category. However, in a bar chart, that numeric value can be anything from mean, median, maximum, percentage, account, really any numeric value that you can think of, or any numeric aggregation that you can think of. On the other hand, a pie chart is a little bit more limited. So a pie chart shows the total amount divided into distinct categories. So the entire pie represents that total amount, and each slice represents a subset of that total amount. And what this means is that each slice represents a percentage of the total. So no matter what numeric value you're showing, even if it's average or maximum or total or counts or percentage, either way it's going to be a percentage of a total of that entire pie, if that makes sense. In this brief explanation of both of the plots, they might seem similar, and they are, but they're not always interchangeable. This is because, for one, a bar allows us to choose both the axis that we want to display the information on and the axis that we want to display the categories on. It also allows us to choose the scale at which we show the numeric values. We're able to decide what scale, the x-axis or y-axis, whichever one's representing that numeric value, what kind of information we're showing. We can start it at 20 to 100. We can start it at 0 to 150. That axis can show the average. It can show the total. It can show the percentage. It doesn't really matter. We can kind of decide what we want to do with each of those axes. On the other hand, a pie chart is constrained to the size of the total or grand total of the numeric value. So the size of the pie represents, in our example from earlier, the entire GDP from all North American countries, regardless of how we show them information. Even if we decide to choose to show averages, it's still going to be interpreted that the entirety of that pie represents the overall average or the overall total of the North American countries' GDPs. Now, just saying that doesn't make sense, and that's kind of one of the shortfalls of a pie chart. However, the pie can make sense when the sum of each group individually is equal to the grand total across all of the data. So what this means is if each slice represents only that North American country, so for example, the United States, Canada, Mexico, the sum of all of those individual GDPs would, in this case, be the grand total GDP for the North American countries. Unless I'm missing another North American country, I'm not positive. Let me know down in the comments. But again, a pie chart falls short, like I explained a few seconds ago, if we're looking at averages or some other aggregated value, because again, each slice, when added up in its entirety, is supposed to represent the whole of the entire population that we're looking at. But if we're looking at something like averages or some other aggregate function to a numeric value, That's not the case. And again, this slide just reiterates what I just said. But displaying this information in this way can be very confusing to a viewer, especially if you're looking at a dashboard or something and you're representing that and you're showing it to stakeholders or somebody else that is going to interpret that this entire pie represents a total. And again, if we're looking at aggregate functions, we can throw that right out the window. Now finally, a few more subjective opinions on why pie charts suck. It is also bad for showing size differences between the groups. Now with a bar chart, it's very easy to see the length of the bar, and you can go straight down and look at the axis and see what number, at least around what number, that bar represents. However, in a pie, when you're trying to compare a bunch of different slices of a pie and compare the size, really you're comparing the angle of the slice and trying to represent in your head what percentage that would be of a total. Sure, you can put the percentage right on the slice, but either way, it makes it more confusing when you're trying to compare the size differences between categories. Now, another reason is that it gets very, very difficult when you're showing a lot of different groups. Whereas in a bar chart, you can order the bars in terms of shortest bar to longest bar, and it's very easy to look down and see, okay, here's the lowest amount of GDP to the highest amount of GDP. Whereas in a pie, even if you order them, it's very difficult to pick out the individual slices, especially if they're very small, and tie information to those. So even if you're labeling them, what the category is and what the numeric value is or the percentage, it's very difficult to take that data and try to find the slice it points to. It just gets confusing and nobody likes it. However, to end my rant on pie charts and why they suck, they can be useful. I think there's only a few situations where they're useful, and that would be where there is only simple data or only 2 to 4 categories of data that we can look at. So one example that comes to mind is if we're comparing the makeup of a school between the two genders. So 55% of our school is male and 45% is female. That's where a pie chart can be useful. I don't think you need to show an entire bar chart to display that information. But hopefully, after this little presentation I gave you, you can agree that pie charts do suck. Bar charts are better in almost every way, especially if we want to take those bars or take those pie slices and cut them up even further into subcategories. So if you've ever seen a bar chart with different colors in the bar, one single bar, so if we were looking at North America, we were looking at United States, that bar could be split up into 50 separate chunks to show the states individually and how much GDP they associated to the overall United States GDP, something like that. If you try to do that on a pie chart, it would be an absolute wreck. It would be mayhem. It would be a catastrophe, and nobody would want to look at it, and you would probably be fired from your job. So watch this video next anyways if you want to become a data analyst, because I think it'll help you out in the long run. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening to my rant.